So what we're going to do today is we're going to talk about OpenClaw. Now, OpenClaw was first called Clawdbot, then Moltbot, and now OpenClaw. I'm sure a lot of you must have heard about it, seen it on Twitter, seen a lot of people talk about it. I don't know, maybe on Reddit as well. It's one of the hottest AI automation tools right now. We will try and understand what's different about OpenClaw, why is it so viral right now, and also try and understand how you can essentially get it set up in the next 1 hour. And of course, I'll take some questions as well towards the end. So let me just share my screen and open my presentation to help you understand what OpenClaw is. Right. So now with AI coming in and AI becoming such a strong piece of whatever we do, uh, we have, of course, used ChatGPT, we've used Claude, we've used Gemini. There are so many products that we've used, right? But one of the core things, or one of the core problems, or one of the core things that haven't yet been solved is how do you give more and more access to this AI? Right now, we already know, if you have attended some of my earlier webinars or sessions, we already know that the LLM, the OpenAI model, the Gemini model, the Claude model, everything is usually the brain. Right now, that's the essential brain that is present here. So we already know that. But now the quest is how can you give more access to that brain? Right? How can you give more and more volume to that game, a brain? How can you give more and more power to that brain so that that can perform more tasks, right? And in that quest, the latest tool or the latest outcome is OpenClaw. Now, let's try and understand what is going on with OpenClaw, right? Now, if you look at how your ChatGPT works, right, is that you go to a ChatGPT, you type what you want to say, and ChatGPT gives you an answer, right? Which essentially means that the moment you've closed the tab of ChatGPT, the context of that answer is gone. Right now, of course, GPT can remember for a while, it can remember things based on a set of context, but it loses your context whenever you go away from that window, which is something that we will call as ephemeral, which is that ChatGPT is not knowing you deeply enough, and which is why the outcomes that come out of ChatGPT are also problematic, right? The second thing, or the second way in which OpenClaw happens, is they figured out a way for OpenClaw to get access to your systems, right? And essentially, what it means is that the model is the same, right? It's using OpenAI's model again. It's not changing anything from there. But what it is doing otherwise, or what it is doing elsewhere, is that it is taking a step back and it's saying that, okay, now this model that you were accessing via a browser window, I can actually make this model sit inside your computer, sit inside your file system, and give it access about everything that you're doing. I can give it access about your calendar, your downloads folder, your files, whatever, right? And that's the biggest difference that has come into play here. Right now, of course, it comes with its own challenges because while using AI on a browser or using an LLM on a browser is not continuous, but what happens is that you can come back and you can look at memory. But here, since your LLM is now sitting inside your computer, the moment you shut down your computer or the moment your computer loses internet or connection, the bot also loses its value, right? So pros and cons, but the pro very clearly is the fact that whenever you want your bot or whenever you want the LLM to get access to some really personal things, right? Things like your downloads folder, things like your pictures, things like your documents, and you want it to do something on top of that, that is where most of the original AI tools were failing, and that's where OpenClaw has come in, right? And that's why it's very important. Now, before we kind of understand and go, into the terminal and see how it works and everything, let's try and understand the overall concept of how this even works. Now, the biggest concept that you have to understand is that how does OpenClaw work? So it works on a very simple gateway model, where on the left is the apps that a user uses. Now, this apps could be your Discord, your Telegram, your WhatsApp. Now, of course, comes with a lot of caveat. Giving AI access to your WhatsApp can really be harmful. There is a lot of stuff that on your WhatsApp that's critical, that's financial. You don't want to give all of that access. But theoretically, if, for example, you had to create a bot that replied on your behalf, what would happen is right now the only way you could do it is you could give access to the chat somehow to ChatGPT or Gemini and ask it to frame a reply. Now you would give it a lot of context, you would give it a lot of prompts and so on and so forth. And based on that, it will generate a reply that may look like you. But figure this out. There is a limit to the prompts, right? There is a limit to the depth of prompt that you can have. You can write maybe 15 lines about you, about how you type. You can write 100 lines about how you type, but there is a limit. Imagine if there was a way by which something, this LLM, which is your GPT-5 or Gemini 2.5 Pro or Claude Opus, these models had access to your entire WhatsApp chat, right? Then it will be very easy for them to behave like you. Right? If they had access to all your chats, it will be very easy for them to understand what's going on there and reply accordingly. Similarly, let's take the example of Slack. Right now, you converse on Slack, you reply to people on Slack, and so on and so forth. But if you were to do it via the current AI tool set, you would have to give access to your Slack messages. Either you have to copy paste them, or if you are not copy pasting them, then you would have to, link via Slack's message API, which is again not available, and so on and so forth, right? So essentially what OpenClaw does is it takes all of these apps, its core basically stores information in local files and operating system, which means that the files stay on your computer, right? Which means that it's safe, although the information is given to an AI, which can do multiple things with it. But essentially, that information is stored on your system, and then the brain, which is your LLMs, which is Anthropic, OpenAI, whatever, is given this information by this OpenClaw core, right? This core is the gateway, which we'll talk about and see in a bit. So essentially what it does is that there is a source. Now this source can be configured. It could be your Telegram, your Discord, your Slack, your WhatsApp, could be anything. The core then processes everything inside this source, stores it onto local files so that it has access to that locally instead of fetching it from internet, and then feeds it to the brain to get the desired outcome. So all that has changed, or there is nothing new that has come in from a technology perspective, right? Connections with WhatsApp, Telegram, etc. had already existed. The LLMs, which is Anthropic, OpenAI, whatever is being used, already existed. The depth of automation has become much better because now there is a way for now there is a software that essentially runs on your Mac. Now it's very experimental at this point, so a lot of things work, a lot of things don't work, but essentially what it can do is it can sit inside your LLM or inside your Mac or inside your computer, inside your Windows, and really help a lot of the things. We'll see how. Now, let's start with a demo and let's start understanding how this even works. So the first thing that we will understand is there are two ways to do this, right? And why there are two ways to do this is you have to first understand that to run OpenClaw, you need a system, right? Very clearly, you need a system. I hope you can see a terminal on your screen. Don't get worried about it if you don't have exposure to tech. It's actually very simple. I'll just explain it to you very simply, right? So what happens in the first thing that you do? So the first thing is just open openclaw.ai and we'll see what's going on here, right? Of course, you can see the value that it brings and so on and so forth. But there are four methods in which there is a quick start that happens, right? The first is one-liner. This is what we're going to use. The second is NPM. This is again another way of doing it. The third is hackable for those who read the source code. And the fourth is a companion app, which you can download for macOS. Now, the companion app is yet to be stable. Of course, if you want, you can just open this. It will take you to this page. And this file right here is the companion app. Although it's very unstable right now, But basically what the companion app does is it gives you a graphic user interface to do this. But that's not what we will do. What we will do is we will just copy this command, the one-liner command from here, and then we're going to put it into our terminal. Yeah. So then what will happen is I'll just copy mine. So this is the command that you see, the command that we copied at the top. We just copy pasted that command on your terminal. Now, how do you open your terminal? Very simple. Just do a command F on your Mac or a control F on this thing, and then just type terminal and it's going to open a terminal, right? So I'm just, for your understanding, I'm just going to kill this terminal and I'm going to open a new one. I'm just going to do a search for terminal, and then this is it, right? So this is the terminal that is open now, right? Now, what I need to do, once again, I need to go to OpenClaw and just copy that one-liner that was there, right? So that is the one-liner that I'm going to copy, and I'm going to hit enter. Right now, since I've already run OpenClaw on my computer, there are a few things that are already running, which is fine. That's okay. For you, it is going to take, I mean, it does take a bit of time. Uh, in the meanwhile, we'll try and understand what happens or what happens behind the scene. What it's trying to do here, it is trying to install OpenClaw on your device, right? Which is basically it's trying to install the code, the software that OpenClaw is on your device. So now it's successfully installed. And now let's understand what's going on here, right? So first of all, of course, it's checking the security, it's checking the skills, and so on and so forth. And now it's running, right? Now, if you see this right at the bottom, it says tighten permission on to 700, which means that do you want to restrict the permissions? For now, we'll just say no. Do you want to create an OAuth directory at a certain folder? We'll say no. And again, we'll say no again here. So this is now where my OpenClaw is ready. And now it's restarting the gateway, right? Which means that it's restarting whatever is going on. And now OpenClaw is going to open a UI interface, which is going to look like this, right? So this is right after this, which is basically from the terminal, it opens this. Now this is your OpenClaw running. Now the URL, do you see? This is not a web URL. This is a local URL, which means that this is running on your system. It has only access to your system. And this is the dashboard that you're going to work with, right? You don't need to work with terminal. Once you've installed it, most of your work can be done here, right? Now let's understand all the things that you could do via an OpenClaw, right? The first thing that you have to understand is, let's go into the config and dig a little deeper, right? So there are a bunch of settings that OpenClaw gives you. So far, what has happened? So far, OpenClaw is now installed in your system, which means that it has access to your file system. It has access to anything happening in your Mac, and you can teach it to do certain things. I'll talk about what that teaching means, but so far that's all that has happened. Now we are trying to look at what are the configurations that OpenClaw is giving us, right? So essentially, for OpenClaw to work, or essentially for anything to work, they would require a certain model that will be the AI model that we will use, right? Now, whenever anything, whenever, once again, to help you understand, whatever is going on, of course, I cannot show you the password for this thing, but whenever this has to do, whenever OpenClaw has to work on something, it requires an LLM model, right? It requires either Anthropic, it requires either OpenAI, it requires some model so that it can hit it, right? So now let's say what I want to do, or what we'll just quickly see is all the things that are available here, right? We'll talk about each of them or most of them in detail and try and understand what they are. But here you can see that there are a lot of configurations that you could do, which is, different things that you could play with. But for now, we will play with one of the most important things, which is called as skills, right? Now, what does skills mean on OpenClaw? Now, you have understood that OpenClaw is now sitting on your Mac. So it's sitting and doing stuff, or can do stuff technically in your computer. But now there are certain skills that it needs to learn, or there are certain ways in which it has to interact with other applications, right? Skills is just a fancy term for APIs, right? So essentially, For OpenClaw, so for example, if I go to chat and I just say how many, oh, okay, sorry, just should, how many files are there in my downloads folder in the last 48 hours, right? If I just say this and hit send, it has access to this already, so it does not really have a problem getting this value, because what happens is it will only, so it just, you have 63 five folders in your downloads in the last 48 hours, right? If I just go and check in my downloads, that will be only 63, because it has access to my files because I've already installed it there, right? Now when you install it, it may ask you for your system's password, so you might have to enter that system's password when you do it one time, but it has this from there, right? But if I ask you but if I ask it, can you access my last message on WhatsApp? Right now, let me ask this. Now it cannot access this. Why? Because this last message of WhatsApp is not sitting in your computer. If this last message of WhatsApp was a file, which was a text file, and I was able to ask it that, okay, can you get this text file for me, it would have been able to read it, right? But since it cannot do that, it requires a way to interact with something else, right? In this case, WhatsApp, right? So clear. So anything that has the ability to that is on my computer, OpenClaw, once it's set up, has the ability to start working on it immediately. There is no broken thing at all. There is nothing broken there at all. And this is the biggest difference, because the rest of it was still there, but now it's become even easier. But I'll talk about that. Right. So, and the best part about OpenClaw is that the chat window is where it can guide you really well about how to set up. So if you see, what it is saying is that I cannot see your personal WhatsApp or your last message there. But what you can do is you can use the WACLI skill to work with a specific WhatsApp business configuration, typically for sending messages to customers or reading sync message history from that business account, right? Even then, it's not the same as having access to your full personal WhatsApp. It's a separate, explicitly linked channel, which I don't have all of those things, right? So that is where it does not have access to. And to get access to these things, to get access to these kind of stuff, you require to teach it skills, right? Now, of course, I wouldn't give it access to WhatsApp. It's a little too risky to do that. But what I have done is I have given it access to something called as GOG, which is Google's workplace skill, based on which it can actually get access to my Gmail, calendar, drive, contact, sheets, and docs, right? You can actually browse through so many skills here. So for example, you can browse through and find Apple Notes, right? Which is sitting, just go and I mean, I've also enabled Apple Notes because it can create notes for me on my Apple Notes. Similarly, there are others as well where you could, talk about. There are a few interesting ones that I would see. I mean, GOG I've already talked about. WhatsApp is Notion. Yeah, of course, Notion is also there, which basically it can create and manage pages on your Notion, right? You would require Notion's API key for that. You would, if you want, like I said, if you want to do WhatsApp, there is WACLI, where it sends WhatsApp message to other people or search WhatsApp history. This is not for normal WhatsApp users, it's only for WhatsApp business. And then Telegram as well. Uh, Maybe it's not showing right now, or okay, maybe it's not built in and you have to get it otherwise. But these are all the skills that it supports. There is a voice call skill where there is a voice plugin. So for example, if you want something to answer based on you, based on your whatever the call comes or whatever, you can teach these skills to this. Now for now, what I've done is I have enabled the Google Workplace skill. Now to just give you an understanding of how you need to do this, so you have to go to something called as cloud console.cloud.google.com and log in with your account, um, even if it's your personal account, you would still have access to this. So you have to log into that, and then you have to create something called as an API or service. Right? So this is cloud.google.com, and then I've created a project for this specifically, and I'm going to go to APIs and service. And there I'm going to just create credentials for this. So this is basically where you have to go. You can find this in any, website or YouTube video, wherever, where how to enable this, which is just search how to enable APIs and services for Google Cloud, and then you would see this, right? So I've already seen this. Now, this is basically a way for Google to share certain passwords. So you can see a secret here. This is a way for Google to share certain passwords. And if I share this password with OpenClaw, it will be able to do certain things with my account. Now I can decide what it has to allow. So at this point, for example, if you look at data access, I can decide what data it needs to look at. Now, the one that I have enabled right now has all access because it's an internal tool, which means that no one apart from having an Ayuda ID will be able to access this, right? So it's fairly safe from that perspective. But yeah, so OpenClaw has access to my Google Workspace, which means I can ask it questions around this, right? So can you summarize the last email I got on my email malay@ayuda.co.in? Right? So now, since I have configured this skill already, it actually has access to this. Now, this is the important part. This is why it's fairly safe to use on a Mac. On a Windows, this will not ask you for this, right? So I don't know if you can see a pop-up on my screen or not, but at this point, I'm getting a pop-up which is asking me to enter the password of my Mac, right? I'm just going to enter that password. If you're using it on a Windows, it will actually not ask you for a password. It will just, do it, right? So here you go, right? So it's actually going through this. Okay, the command is hanging, but so I can't save. So, okay, so it's just saying that, hey, it's hanging for some reason, but it's giving me an option to do it, right? So what it's saying is you can go and run this on a terminal, or you could copy paste your content here, whatever that is. But essentially, it's not able to figure out. I don't know, I did. Maybe I entered the wrong password. Let me say, do you want to try again and see this? But in the meantime, I can actually show you another prompt that is there. Let me just enter the password in the meantime and see. But in the meantime, I'm going to just show you that here is, what it would look like, right? So here, what I would want to do is what I asked about it is I asked it to say that, hey, give me, a list of all my meetings today, or give me a list of all the meetings that I have today, and then how are you going to, and then, talk to me about this, right? So this is what my meeting was, and it gave me suggestions on, what do I say in this webinar, right? So essentially, I just said that, hey, can you check my later next meeting and give me suggestions on what I need to do, all via this chat, right? So for different meetings, you could do that because now it has access to everything that your Google Calendar has. So that is why it has access to all of them, right? So now it has figured out the retry work because I think I entered the wrong password for my Mac that time. So now it's worked. The most recent, this thing is a webinar registration, of course, since we're just doing this webinar. So I got this. So now, a Zoom registration has confirmation. It likely contains the joining link, registration confirmation, iOS attachment. If you want, I can pull the entire message body and we want to give the summary. So I can just do this and it's going to pull it and it's going to give me the entire summary, right? So now it's become really powerful, right? Because now OpenClaw is sitting on it. Okay, I can do an always allow and it will not ask for a password again and again, but I'm sure you guys know that it's a little risky to do that. So that's why I haven't. I still enter the password whenever it's running. But essentially, now it's going to pull the latest email. So there it is. It's pulled the latest email. It's going to just it's going to work its magic and this is what it is. So it's going to give me a summary of this. So this is that Zoom is telling me that multiple people have registered. Each section lists a registrant's name, webinar, and link, and thanks you as the host. It also notes that there is a daily cap on the registration and points at Zoom management page if you want to move. So I got the essence of my email. This is just the last email. I can do this. Now, can you summarize the emails that I've received in the last 8 hours? Just to keep the tokens lesser. So it can do the same thing here. So any skill that you teach it, right? Be it WhatsApp, be it Gmail, be it anything. So the moment you teach that skill to OpenClaw, it is actually going to be able to become so powerful where it's going to look at it. So now it's looking at the last roughly 8 hours. So there are some one-on-one notifications, there is some this thing, there is some things thing. So I've gotten some new requests and so on and so forth, newsletters. So it's basically clearing all of this up, right? I can set up this as a cron job, which essentially means that I can set this exact thing, right? Right now I'm doing it one by one, which is I'm every time I'm giving it a prompt, I can set this up as a cron job and say that, hey, this, I think this is the right one that say that I can say that, hey, you are an OpenClaw sub agent that runs every 30 minutes to help me prepare for my next meeting. You can call session status to get this. You can call blah, blah, blah. Now, I haven't written it. All I did was I told it to create a cron job for me and I told it my use case. So I just told it here, can you create a cron job for me that fetches my mail every day and sends me a summary of it here at 8 a.m. in the morning? So now this is going to create a cron job for me, which is where it's going to use all of this. So you don't have to even work on the UI now. It's going to be very simple for you to do it. If you want to work, you can do it here. I mean, you can put the date and the message and everything. But here it's going to look at it's created a cron job. So I'll just go there. See, the fourth job has come and daily summary 8 a.m. cron job is created, right? So URL OpenClaw, this thing, whatever, Gmail account is this, you can run do that and blah, blah, blah. I can just run it and see how it's going on. So now my email is completely inside OpenClaw, right? If I just allow it to do it always, it is not going to ask me the password and it's just going to run every single time. But you don't want to do it. Maybe you want to restrict read access and then do it. But essentially now it has learned my Google Workspace skill. So everything around my Google Workspace skill can become driven and powered by AI now, right? It takes a bit of time because it has to fetch and summarize and all of that, but it is done. Ignore the error for now. That's because I've programmed it for security, but it's created a daily summary already. There are multiple one-on-one meeting requests. There are different people who the meeting requests are with, various people. There's a webinar today and so on and so forth. There's a CFO letter and blah, blah, blah. So then, I can also ask it to send this to my Telegram. I can ask this to send to me as a WhatsApp message. I can ask this to send to me as an email, whatever works, right? Because now, of course, so far it has only access to Google, which is why that. But now if I say, could you help me send this to my Telegram? So now it's going to give me step-by-step understanding of how this message is going to go to my Telegram, right? So, but he just needs to know where. Do you want a personal DM? Do you want a specific channel? So I can just give all of these details and it's going to basically work on my Telegram or on my WhatsApp, right? Now, once again, caveat, it is a bit risky. So that's why, automating things like your WhatsApp, etc., is a little risky right now. Google still has like extremely good level of security. So that's why it's still safe to experiment there, but still, yeah, take care about how you're doing it. Especially if you're on a Windows, then it's a little more careful because on Mac, like you saw, every action that it does, it needs to enter. I need to enter my password. I have set it like that. But on Windows, it can actually bypass everything and do it on its own, right? There are more skills that I can, add. Like I said, now there is another on Apple Notes. So I could just say that. Could you ask the cron job to publish the daily summary on my Apple Notes? So then it's going to push it to my Apple Notes because that is how the cron job is created and that is how it works, right? So essentially, this is basically how OpenClaw works. Now, we've talked about skills, we've talked about how it reacts to external, but another very important use case of something like OpenClaw is using the file itself, right? So here it's giving me so that it's updated it. So it's going to pull 24 hours. It's going to group it. The new behavior is that it's going to use the memo skill, which I just showed you, the Apple Notes, so that it writes the digest into Apple Notes. The note title will be this. If the note already exists, then it will append it. So for example, if you want to journal, right? If you want to write a journal every day, instead of you going to Apple Notes and entering it there, you could just plug in different kind of situations, maybe plug in your meeting notes, plug in your Slack messages or whatever, and just put everything into this, right? So coming back to the other use case that is there, which is now this is the external linkage, and this is pretty good, pretty nice, and pretty straightforward. I'll just show you a little bit around the other things as well. The overview is okay. It's mostly technical stuff, just the fact that it's connected. Remember, we did not do just anything. We just copy pasted this code into our terminal. It may ask you the password, etc., based on what system you're using. So if you want to experiment, just give that password, you'll get access to everything. And similarly, I just showed you how to connect Google Auth. Best thing is just ask OpenClaw itself. Just ask on chat, how do I do it? It's going to give you a step-by-step way of doing it. Channels is where you have to link channels. So I've only linked a Telegram bot so far because I frankly don't use Telegram and it's fine. But you can link WhatsApp. So for example, right now only Telegram is linked. But if I start learning the skill around WhatsApp, the WhatsApp thing will also get added here. But right now, channel is the only thing that is configured and it's running, which means that I can send things to a Telegram bot or to a Telegram message. I can give it options. So far I haven't given the ability to do this, right? So I can give the options to, okay, delete a message, react, and so on and so forth. And I can change multiple things from there. Sessions is all the sessions that are running. So TUI is the terminal UI. So that is the UI that we had. So one of the instances of OpenClaw is running on the terminal. Then there is one cron. There are four crons that you saw, right? There are four cron jobs. So each of them are sessions, right? Because that cron job has to run on its own, which means that you don't have to be here, right? But the problem with this is that if now this is running on your system, right? See the web URL here. It's running on your system, which means that if this stops, your cron also will stop and it will not work. So this means that your Mac, that whatever you're using, has to stay open and has to have internet connection consistently without sleeping for it to work. Now that's of course not very useful, not very easy, which is why I'm sure you might have seen on Twitter or Reddit, etc., that people are buying Mac Minis. Now, Mac Minis is nothing, it doesn't have a screen, it's just a CPU and it gets plugged into any display and it becomes a Mac essentially. So that's what people are doing, where they're putting Mac Minis and then they stay online forever so that Claudbot can, or OpenClaw, sorry, can run. There is another way in which you could do it, which is called as a VPS, which is a virtual system. I'll talk about that towards the end of what we'll do in the next 10 minutes. But the final thing that I would want to show you here is, apart from of course, sorry, two things. One of the things is that this is the main agent that I have. So this is the one that's doing all the job, right now. What I have done is, the model that I'm using is OpenAI's Codex GPT 5.1, and that is the primary model that I'm using, right? So this, all the work that the LLM is doing, all the brain that the LLM is providing, is via OpenAI's models, right? If you have to get OpenAI's models, you would require the API key, because of which you could just go to platform.openai.com and there just go to API keys and you will see your open. So there is an OpenClaw API that I have ready. There are other APIs that I use for other things as well, but OpenClaw API that is active. That secret is there with with OpenClaw, and that's why I'm able to use the model. There is another very good way in which you could do it. It allows you to actually log in with your ChatGPT. So basically, what will happen is, when you set it up for the first time, it's going to ask you two methods of how you want to do it. It's either going to ask you this OpenAI API key, or it's going to ask you to actually do what do I say? Do a login from your ChatGPT, and it's going to just open the ChatGPT login page, and you can log in, and then it's going to use your credits from there, right? So even better. Finally, the last part and the best part of what makes OpenClaw even more powerful is what I said earlier, which is the fact that it has access to all my computer. So, which means that, can you find my resume on my system and give me the path? So I can actually ask it to clear my computer, to organize my files, to delete files, to remove things from there, right? So basically, it saw my resume in my downloads. There is a file that is this, there is another file, there is another file, there is another file. So it has basically given me all the paths because it has access to my computer. So it can search my computer and find where my CV is. right? Can you tell me the number of files in downloads that have been there for the last, for more than 60 days? For the last, for more than the last 30 days, right? So if I want to clean up my computer or things like that, I could do that from there. Of course, there is so much. There are 756 files that are there in my download folders. And, could you delete those files? Right, so now it's it's still since there is an LLM, it's got a brain, so it's going to say that, hey, I don't want to rather delete your files without you seeing them. Can I move it to trash? And I can run something for that, and then sends it to trash, and then you can have a look if you want to recover, or if you want to see a sample, tell me, I'll see a sample. And then I would say that, hey, just show me a sample first, and then it's going to start picking up those files from my system. And here it is, right? So this is the files that are available now. So there is an image, there is an invoice, there is a CV, multiple, there's an N10 logo, there are so many things that are there. So based on this, I can now take a decision that, okay, these don't look some things that I want to keep, I'd rather delete them, right? That is why OpenClaw is so powerful, and now so many things can be automated, right? People are building skills every single day. So, for example, um, I would just show you, there is a place, yeah, there's something called as Claw Hub, which is where people are building skills every single day. So I think someone asked on chat as well, can you build your own skill? You can, but why build it when the world is building them and you can just sit there? So here, so YouTube summarizer is a skill that someone has built, which is where it will go through YouTube videos and summarize it, right? Very useful, right? There are so many podcasts that you would want to see, but you cannot because there is no because it's not feasible, or you don't have that time, right? Similarly, bird to read search, so it's a Twitter XCLI, which is a Twitter skill, which is for reading, searching, and posting via cookies. Or so basically, it reads Twitter, finds what's going on, creates a post for you, and does it, right? So another automation. There is Mailchimp, there is Google Slides, there is Google Play. So many skills are getting built. ClawHub is the best place to look at it because it's got the most skills. So you can keep going through the best ones and see what's going on. OpenClaw itself has its skills library as well, which is I think this is going to be here. Yeah, this is there. So you see 50 plus integrations. So it's going to tell you these are the skill libraries. So WhatsApp, Telegram, Discord, Slack, Signal, iMessage, Teams. So you can automate so many things from there. And these are the models that it supports, right? I was using OpenAI right now. You could, if you have Anthropic, you could use that. Gemini, you could use that. The best part about OpenAI and Gemini is that you don't have to pay separately for the API. What you could do is you could just log in via your OpenAI account and use that, right? And then, of course, productivity skills, Notion, Apple Reminders, Trello, Apple Notes, Spotify. So you could actually, create playlists, or it could actually find songs that you like based on your taste, based on a history of you searching or seeing songs, and suggest you a new song, right? Your home, basically, you could automate the way your Philips lights work, right? Which is you just run a cron job that understands the temperature outside and does something from there, right? And of course, browsers, so hey, which is browser, Gmail, voice. There's so many things that are already there. There are so many things that are already working very, very well on OpenClaw. Although it's still, I wouldn't say it's still ready. It's still, getting baked, but the potential is enormous. And I'm sure very soon, Claude or ChatGPT, because they've also launched applications for the system, they will also come with versions that are a little more secure because they've shown the path. Now, finally, before I pause for questions, and I'm sure there would be a lot, I told you that here the problem is that my computer always needs to be online, which is why another way to do it is via Hostinger, right? So what does Hostinger do? I'll just all you need to search is Hostinger OpenClaw on Google, and it's going to open this, and this is what it is, right? You can try for the first month for free, but basically here what it gives you is it gives you a VPS, basically a virtual system, basically a another machine, another computer. So it gives you a computer worth 8 GB of RAM, worth 100 GB of disk space, and worth 8 TB of bandwidth, right? So essentially what you need to do is, of course, you would need to purchase this. Using on your local is better. Try it out. If it's actually working, do it. And once you've purchased it, I mean, done it for a month, which is like $500, you try it out. Then you can run an OpenClaw project on your virtual system. So now what is happening is I don't need my Mac or my local or my terminal to actually run. If I just open this, um, I would need to copy paste the gateway key, which is going to be inside manage, environment. Here is the gateway key, login. Oh, for some reason this is not working. Oh yeah, it's working. Right? So the same thing opens here, right? Whatever we are seeing here, but do you see the URL is different? So this is the URL that you've bought on Hostinger. So essentially what you've done on Hostinger is you've bought a virtual system, which is not your Mac. So if you go back and see the URL of Mac 127.0.0.1 and this is the port on which your Mac and OpenClaw was connected. This is the one on which your virtual machine is connected. The rest is just the same, right? The rest is just the same. You can train it from the same skills. So here, for example, again, I've trained it on Google Workspace, and then the same things of whatever you were able to do here, you are able to do here. It's the only thing that has changed is this, right? And like I said, I have given an open API key, the same thing you would give otherwise as well, so that you can run this. All right. Thank you so much, everyone, for joining on a Friday night. I'm sure a lot of you have plans, and I'll not keep you for long. If you want to go deeper into AI, into AI PM, or into all that's going on, my program can really help. I've dropped in the link on the website, on the chat. Do check it out, and if you feel that that's something that can help, do spend time on that. And yeah, thank you so much for joining. Have a great rest of your weekend. Do try out OpenClaw and let me know if it went well. You can let me know on WhatsApp from the group itself. So yeah, thank you so much for your time, and I'll hope to see you in the next one.